Hello and welcome to another short video about posted in the past. Today I'm going to share the story behind this postcard, which is a multi-view of Dorking. When I was putting together the postcards that would be in second delivery, which has been published this year, I decided I would have a short theme which would tell the story of the Mayflower. And I decided that I would have postcards which would illustrate the various stages of the Mayflower's journey in this country, and also from Holland and then across the Atlantic to America, and then also what happened next as well. And I had also decided that I would use the Mullins family from Dorking as the starting point for this part of the story. William Mullins wasn't actually what we would regard as a pilgrim. He was actually one of the financial backers, and he had premises in West Street in Dorking. And I had hoped to find a postcard that I could use of this area of Dorking, but in the end I couldn't, because the postcards have to be a certain age, and there weren't any that I could find that I could use to research. So I ended up buying this multi-view of Dorking. Now, if you look on the back, you'll see that it was actually sent to a family in America, in California. Before I commit to buying a postcard, if I'm buying it online, I try to find the recipient in an official record that will allow me to begin my research, which will start with creating a family tree. So in this country, if the recipient's address is in the UK, I'll look on the 1901 or 1911 census returns perhaps. In America, it's the 1910 census return, which allowed me to trace this family who had received the postcard. And I found the Whitford family at the address, and the census return revealed that Samuel Whitford, his wife and 3 children, had actually emigrated from England. So I was able to move back to England for the 1901 census, and this showed me that Samuel was a silversmith, and eventually I discovered that he was a 3rd generation silversmith, and his grandfather was a very successful silversmith, and his work reaches quite high sums of money when it comes on the market today. Samuel II, the father of the Samuel who emigrated, not only was he a silversmith, but he came up in records as being a secretary to a hospital. And this developed into secretary of a children's hospital in London. And I wondered perhaps if it was Great Ormond Street. And it was. And I discovered that actually he became the first secretary of the hospital, which opened in the 1860s. And he was with the hospital for more than 30 years. Now, I think most people will be familiar with the story of J.M. Barrie's generosity with the royalties from Peter Pan that benefited the hospital. Well, that was in the 20th century. And we're going back decades to when the hospital opened, which was actually with only about 10 beds. So Samuel needed to help raise money, and he did this through various sources, including arranging lectures. He also arranged for the sponsorship of beds, and Charles Dickens was one of those sponsors. And so you can see who Samuel Whitford was dealing with at this time. I was able to find that actually Samuel III was also a secretary to a children's hospital in London, but a different one. And this also has associations with Charles Dickens. Because I was finding so much information about the children's hospitals in London, I wondered if I might be able to find a postcard of the hospital or the exterior, and I did. And I also found 2 postcards which were sent to children as patients in the hospital. So these 2 postcards were sent to children on the wards in the hospital in the early years of the 20th century. And I found a marvellous resource which is a database of children who were admitted into London hospitals. And this provided me with the information I needed to create their family trees. And this showed me obviously where the children lived. The database had the details of why they were admitted, when they were discharged, who cared for them, all the personal details as well. There's a time limit on these records. It's only very, very historical information. There's nothing recent, remotely recent. But anyway, one of the children was the daughter of a policeman. And so you have these examples of the kind of people whose children were actually able to be treated in the hospital at this time. And sadly, I was able to discover that one of the children died a few days after receiving their postcard from their brother. The other postcard was sent to a young girl, and she was successfully treated, and I was able to find that she lived to be a very, very good age. So this was a remarkable story of the Great Ormond Street's early years, and of course it all comes down to beginning with a postcard, which is the same with all of the postcards that I've researched. The stories, some of them linked to the rich and famous, and it all starts with a postcard that might have been sent to a relative, might have been sent to that famous person themselves before they had begun a career. And this one actually I think is quite special. Now, if you remember, I said that the Mullins family lived in West Street in Dorking, and of course this family lived in West Street as well in America. So there was a lovely parallel story to this postcard, and although I was getting a bit annoyed that I couldn't find one that had been sent with a nice picture of the region of Dorking that I needed, it actually, I think, was the perfect postcard because it's a lovely story that allowed me to find out more about Great Ormond Street, because like a lot of people, I was more familiar with what happened in the era when J.M. Barrie was living just behind the hospital. He was actually living in a road behind it. And so this sort of revealed to me the connections with Charles Dickens and the Whitford family, and what a marvellous family they must have been to commit so much of their time to raising money and to helping children in these hospitals in Victorian England. So anyway, that's the end of this short video. Almost. If you like, you can follow me on Twitter and Facebook. I'm at Posted in the Past on both of those platforms, and every day I share a postcard, which might be from the first book, it might be from the second book, or it might be from my ever-growing pile of postcards that I've yet to research. And I also can share information about genealogy, about family history. And if you've watched Who Do You Think You Are or A House Through Time, and you've thought that you might want to begin your family tree, well, I highly recommend it, but it does become an addiction. And I've also worked on my own family's tree, obviously, as well as all these other people who have no relation to me whatsoever. But it's a fascinating hobby, and hopefully I'll share another video soon. I will try and do one about the Mayflower, but that is such a complicated story with so many postcards. It will probably just be one or two that I can select to tell you the story behind. Anyway, thank you for listening.